When we walk through the great temples of Karnak or Luxor, we are struck by the immense size of everything around us. The towering columns reach for the sky, and the statues of the pharaohs are truly colossal. These massive figures carved from stone stand as eternal guardians of Egypt's past. It's easy to look at a 60-foot statue of a king and wonder if the man himself was a giant. This idea has captured the imagination of people for centuries. It creates a powerful myth, a story of god-kings who were larger than life in every way. The legend suggests they were not ordinary men but divine beings, whose physical stature matched their incredible power and influence over the land of the Nile. This mystery is honestly one of the most exciting parts of Egyptology. Were these rulers really giants walking the earth? Or is there another explanation for the grandeur we see in their monuments? The art of ancient Egypt often shows the pharaoh as much larger than everyone else. In carvings, you'll see the king towering over his enemies and even his own family. This artistic choice was a symbol of his importance. It was a way to communicate his supreme authority and his divine connection to the gods. But this is art, a form of ancient propaganda. We must look beyond the stone and the paint to find the real truth hidden within the tombs. The stories passed down through generations have often embellished the truth. Early explorers and travelers seeing the massive sarcophagi and the gigantic statues might have easily concluded that only a giant could fit inside or be represented by such a monument. They did not have the scientific tools we have today to investigate these claims properly. Their accounts added fuel to the fire of the myth, creating a romantic and awe-inspiring image of the pharaohs that has been very hard to shake. This legend became part of the magic of ancient Egypt, a land of secrets and wonders where anything seemed possible, even kings who were giants. To solve this puzzle, we cannot rely on legends or artistic representations alone. We must turn to science, the most powerful tool in the modern archaeologist's kit. The real evidence does not lie in the size of a temple, but in the physical remains of the pharaohs themselves. The mummies, preserved for thousands of years, hold the answers. They are the silent witnesses waiting to tell their story. By examining them, we can measure their bones, study their health, and finally understand their true height. The time for myths is over. It is time for scientific fact to reveal the human beings behind the golden masks and towering statues. In my years as an archaeologist, I have had the privilege of coming face to face with the royal mummies of Egypt. These are not just artifacts, they are the bodies of the great kings who ruled this land. Using modern technology, we can now look inside these ancient remains without ever unwrapping the delicate linen bandages. The CT scanner has become our window into the past. It allows us to create detailed, three-dimensional images of the skeletons of the pharaohs. With these scans, we can take precise measurements of their bones, particularly the long bones like the femur and tibia, which are essential for calculating a person's height in life. This is where the real investigation begins. The data we have gathered from these scans provides a much clearer picture than any legend. When we analyze the skeletons of the pharaohs from the New Kingdom, for example, we find that they were not giants. In fact, their height was quite typical for their time. The average man in ancient Egypt stood at about 1.65 meters, or roughly 5 feet 5 inches. The pharaohs, who had access to the best nutrition and healthcare available, were often slightly taller than the general population. This is not surprising. A good diet during childhood and adolescence contributes significantly to reaching one's full height potential, a luxury most commoners did not have. Our scientific studies have created a database of heights for many different rulers. From Amenhotep I to Thutmose IV, the results are consistent. We see men who were well-built and healthy, but entirely within the normal range of human height. For instance, the mummy of Thutmose III, one of Egypt's greatest military pharaohs, reveals he was about 1.61 meters or 5 feet 3 inches tall. His successor, Amenhotep II, was a bit taller, standing at around 1.67 meters or 5 feet 6 inches. These are the heights of real men, not mythical giants. The science gives us cold, hard facts that help us separate the person from the powerful image they projected. The importance of this scientific evidence cannot be overstated. It grounds our understanding of ancient Egypt in reality. It reminds us that these incredible pyramids, temples, and tombs were built by human beings. The pharaohs were men, and sometimes women, who possessed extraordinary power and vision, but they were not physically different from us in a supernatural way. The CT scans do more than just measure height. They also reveal details about their health, age at death, and sometimes even the cause of death. Each scan adds a new chapter to their life story, making them more relatable and stripping away the layers of myth that have surrounded them for millennia. Let us look at two of the most famous pharaohs in history, Ramesses II and Tutankhamun. Ramesses the Great is often the first name that comes to mind when people think of a powerful pharaoh. He ruled for 67 years and left his mark all over Egypt with his massive building projects. His statues are among the largest ever created. So, was he a giant? I was part of the team that examined his mummy. Our analysis showed that Ramesses II was approximately 1.73 meters tall, which is about 5 feet 8 inches. While this was certainly taller than the average Egyptian man of his time, it is far from the height of a giant. He was a strong and imposing figure, but his stature was that of a tall, well-fed man, not a mythical being. On the other end of the spectrum is Tutankhamun, the famous boy king. His tomb, discovered in 1922, was filled with fabulous treasures that captured the world's imagination. For many years, his mummy was a great mystery. When we placed his remains into the CT scanner, we were able to learn so much about him. Our scans revealed that King Tutankhamun was about 1.67 meters or 5 feet 6 inches tall at the time of his death. Like Ramesses II, he was taller than many of his subjects, but he was not exceptionally tall by modern standards. The science showed us a young man who was of average height but who suffered from various health issues, including a clubfoot. The comparison between these two pharaohs is very telling. Ramesses II lived into his 90s and was a robust, tall leader. Tutankhamun died as a teenager and had physical ailments, yet both were pharaohs of Egypt, worshipped as gods on earth. Their physical height was not the source of their power. Their power came from their royal bloodline, their religious authority, and their control over the state and its army. The evidence from their mummies proves that a pharaoh's greatness was not measured in feet and inches. It was measured by their legacy, their buildings, and their ability to maintain Ma'at, the divine order of the universe. So does this mean the search for a giant pharaoh is over? Based on the royal mummies we have studied so far, the answer is a clear no to the question of giants. No pharaoh whose mummy has been scientifically examined has been found to be over 2 meters or 6 feet 6 inches tall. The evidence consistently points to a royal family that was well-nourished and therefore taller than the general populace, but their heights were completely within the normal human range. The science of mummy studies has replaced the myth of giants with the fascinating reality of the men who ruled ancient Egypt. They were human, just like us. If the pharaohs were not giants, then why did they build such enormous statues and temples? The answer lies in the psychology of power and religion. The size of these monuments was not meant to be a literal representation of the pharaoh's physical height. Instead, it was a powerful symbol of his status and authority. In ancient Egyptian ideology, the pharaoh was the intermediary between the gods and humanity. By making his statues colossal, he was visually elevating himself above ordinary mortals and placing himself in the realm of the gods. When a common Egyptian stood before a giant statue of Ramesses II, they were meant to feel small and awestruck, reinforcing the king's divine power. The enormous scale of the temples served a similar purpose. Great temple complexes like Karnak were considered the homes of the gods on earth. Their massive gateways, vast courtyards, and dense forests of columns were designed to impress and intimidate. They were physical manifestations of the power of the gods and, by extension, the power of the pharaoh who built them. The size was symbolic of the immense and untouchable nature of the divine world. It was a form of architectural propaganda, communicating a message of eternal strength and stability. The pharaoh's name and image were carved everywhere, forever linking him to this divine power and ensuring his legacy would last for eternity. This use of scale in art and architecture is not unique to ancient Egypt. Throughout history, rulers and empires have used grand structures to project power and importance. Think of the massive buildings of the Roman Empire or the grand cathedrals of medieval Europe. The goal is always the same: to create a sense of awe and to make a statement about the strength and permanence of the ruling power. The Egyptian pharaohs were simply masters of this technique. Their ability to organize the labor and resources to create such monuments was, in itself, a demonstration of their absolute control over the land and its people. The size of the statue reflected the size of the pharaoh's power, not the size of his body. In conclusion, the mystery of the giant pharaohs is one that science has largely solved. The evidence from their mummified remains and the detailed CT scans tells a clear story. The kings of ancient Egypt were men of normal stature, who were often taller than their subjects due to a privileged lifestyle. But they were not giants. The colossal statues and temples they built were a brilliant and effective form of symbolic communication, designed to convey their divine status and immense authority. The true size of the pharaohs was not in their physical height, but in their ambition, their faith, and the incredible civilization they led. The magic of Egypt is not in myth, but in this amazing human achievement.